This episode contains themes of suicide, murder, coercion, and the death of children. Please use discretion if choosing to continue to listen to this episode. Also, if you or someone you know is suffering from depression or suicidal thoughts or ideation, please know that you and they are not alone. Dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Please do not feel like you shouldn't get help. Everyone deserves help. Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Fundie. This one, I gotta tell you, it's gonna be a lot darker than most of our usual ones. I've been working on this episode for a very long time. There's so much research, so much information to really do this one justice. But I also wanted to make sure that I did it properly and respectfully in a way that wasn't just gore-mongering or anything like that. I'm not in the business of entertainment. I'm in the business of information and knowledge and exposure to things that people may not know about or may not have adequate information for. So that being said, this episode is centered around the People's Temple, or Jonestown, or Jim Jones, as you might have heard of, and it does contain the actual audio from the last day at Jonestown from the infamous massacre that occurred there. But I cannot stress enough how much this is for information and for warning and for knowledge and not for gross, morbid entertainment purposes. So do with that what you will. I also want to let you know that this is a lot of information. So the reason I've been working on this episode for so long is because I couldn't figure out how to condense the information I needed to convey into less than 12 hours. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the history of the People's Temple and the history of Jim Jones and who he was as a person. But I encourage you to follow the links that I'll provide in the show notes or do your own research via Google and really deep dive into all of the people and the places that were involved in what later became such an infamous massacre, I suppose. I always encourage you to do further research than what I provide. So there will be some names kind of omitted throughout this, some details omitted throughout this, but that doesn't make them less important. It just made them a little bit less pointed towards the point I was trying to get to. But again, I highly encourage you to visit a lot of the links that I'm going to provide or links that you find on your own and to do your own research before coming to any conclusions or things like that about events that I discuss in my episodes. So that being said, again, trigger warning, this episode contains themes of suicide, murder, coercion, and the death of children. So if that is something that bothers you, I highly recommend that you don't listen to this episode. If it does not, then strap in. The thing that I find the most wild about this case, and I know I use that word all the time, but truly the thing I find the most interesting about this case is, and the most dangerous about this case is that it started from a good place. That's what blows my mind about Jim Jones and how far he fell from where he started. We'll talk a little bit more about that in this episode, but this was an important message that I wanted to make sure that people heard because this is a perfect example of how bad people get good people under their wings and under their control by starting out as quote unquote good people and by purporting good messages and things that on the surface sound like they should be good and they should be progressive and they should be what we all strive for. And then they take that power that they gain by telling you everything you want to hear. And maybe at the time they actually believe it. But then once you give someone that kind of power and once you give somebody money and control over other people, Jim Jones is a perfect example of how those previously good messages can very quickly become abusive and how you as a follower of these people can very quickly become the victim of abuse that you didn't even realize you were falling for because it happens so slowly, so gradually, and you so gradually get intertwined into these people's systems or programs programs or platforms or groups. And the next thing you know, it's ugly and it's bad and it's hard to get out of. So James Warren Jones, he was born in May 13th, 1931. He was originally involved in Pentecostalism, and Pentecostalism is a Protestant charismatic Christian movement that believes that there is a direct personal experience that you can have with God through baptism. For those of you who aren't familiar with Christianity, that's kind of getting dunked in the water. They believe that through baptism, you could have a personal relationship with God, and that was the only way to do it. So Jim Jones was later ordained as a Christian minister in the Independent Assemblies of God, and he gained followers after joining the Pentecostal Latter Rain movement. Now, the difference between a Pentecostal and a Latter Rain Pentecostal is, as we said earlier, Pentecostals believe that baptism is basically the only way to experience a relationship with God, and Latter Rain Pentecostals, or the Latter Rain movement, thought that the Holy Spirit could actually be spread through physical touch. It could be passed from one believer to another believer through the laying of hands, which is, for those of you who have seen the videos of people, touching the foreheads of the members of the church, and they pass out and they fall backwards and they're just overcome with the Spirit of the Lord. That is very much a Latter Rain movement. So Jones was very charismatic and quickly gained the attention of prominent leaders within the church who were impressed by his teachings and his ministry. Jones used his newfound attention from these important people within the church to spread awareness for what was considered socialist and communist ideology. For example, he believed in racial equality, and he fought against the idea that congregations should be racially segregated. So that's a prime example of what I'm talking about. He came out and he was like, hey, Black people and white people are equal. People of all races should be able to worship God together. That shouldn't be a problem. And that's a fantastic message. And that's how he initially got his followers who agreed and believed in these what were called socialist ideas and movements. And that's why he became popular with the laymen, because they were like, yeah, we shouldn't have to sit through racist church sermons. We should be allowed to integrate and sit next to each other and kind of and bond with one another over our shared belief in Christ and in God. He also valued the idea that the community should take charge in efforts to assist the poor, the homeless, care for his fellow man. So he had some good ideas. He was like, hey, let's take our money that's going to the church right now and feed the homeless the way that Jesus would, or the way that God intended in the Bible, which sadly was considered progressive for that time. It was not a shared belief, which is unfortunate and ironic at the same time. However, the more he vocalized his ideas related to racial equality, the less support he received from leaders of the church. He actually left his post as a student pastor within Somerset Southside Methodist Church when they denied his efforts to desegregate his congregation. So he gave up a position very early on in favor of assimilating all races and allowing them to worship together, which again at the time was progressive and is still a great message and a great idea to, combat racism. This, however, didn't dissuade him. In 1955, he founded the church that would later become the infamous People's Temple. At the time, it was called Community Unity Church and was led out of a rented space in Indianapolis, Indiana. He gained a following that he wanted to expand, and he wanted it to grow larger than it was at the time. Now, this is where things both literally and figuratively started to head south. So as much as his ideas were good ideas, like desegregation and feeding the homeless, he was not exactly a good dude entirely. Jones had witnessed faith-healing sermons at a Seventh-day Adventist church, which involved the idea that laying hands on someone afflicted with sickness or with sin could heal them right there in front of the congregation. Again, we're talking about put your hands on their forehead, demand that the power of Jesus or the power of God, Christ, compels them to heal, right? And in a lot of these videos, they fall backwards, they convulse. It's just a very performative aspect of what is quote-unquote healing. He saw how popular the style of preaching was and how people flocked to either be healed or to witness miraculous healing. He realized that if he could harness the popularity that faith healing was growing, he could gain more members to his church and, more importantly, more money. According to How the Millennium Comes Violently from Jonestown to Heaven's Gate by Catherine Wessinger, he and select members of the community Unity began to knowingly perform fake faith-healing acts in front of their congregation. They went so far as to use chicken livers and other miscellaneous parts from butchered animals as props, pretending that they were cancer tissue that had been removed from the actor who was portraying the afflicted, and it was removed by the power of prayer. So he would hide these chicken livers on their body and pretend right there in front of the congregation that he himself, through the power of prayer, had removed cancer from somebody's body. This worked, unfortunately. His church began to increase in numbers so quickly, and he made so much money from this grift that he was able to purchase his own building and founded what we now know as the People's Temple Christian Church Full Gospel, which thankfully was shortened in mainstream media to People's Temple. So that's what we're going to call it from now on. So it's conflicting because on one hand, he is lying, he's grifting, he's cheating, he's stealing, but he's using that money to build a church and to feed the homeless and to basically live out his considered socialist ideations. So it's like a Robin Hood situation, except he's stealing from everyone to help the poor. Now, Jones caught the attention of Reverend William Branham, who is another performative swindler who led sermons and congregations through the supposed miracle of faith healing. Branham had a kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for, signature move. The reason he was so famous was he was able to choose someone random, and I put that in air quotes, for his faith healing. And he, whenever they would approach him from the congregation, he would be able to tell them their name, address, and their affliction before supposedly healing them. So they thought he had this magnificent power through God to tell them everything about themselves before healing them. Together, Jones and Branham were so popular that their first joint campaign involved 11,000 attendees. 11,000 people showed up because they had heard of this miraculous faith healing. Jones used his newly expanding ministry to do things like open a soup kitchen, which would serve 2,800 meals per month. He offered job search assistance, and he offered rent payment to people in need. He was also appointed to the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission. So again, very conflicting because you're like, here you are lying to people, convincing them that you have the power to heal them from serious illnesses like cancer and taking their money from them, but then turning around and putting that money into the mouths of the homeless and the needy and helping people get jobs and helping them keep a roof over their head. So you're like, how do you even handle somebody like that? How do you call them out? Because on one hand, they're doing a really good thing, and you don't want to be personally responsible for homeless people not being fed, but at the same time, they're clearly lying and they're grifting. But anyway, in 1959, Jones began testing a new, more fiery, boisterous sermon preaching style. He practiced more dynamic speech patterns involving dramatic lulls and crescendos. Jones also began challenging individual members of his congregation in front of the rest of the group, calling them out publicly in a way that made them less likely to speak out or ask questions. There it is. There's the answer to that question. How do you deal with somebody like that? Apparently you don't, because you don't want to be called out and you don't want to be accused of not believing. The speeches would also mark the beginning of the temple's underlying us versus them message that would later lead to tragic consequences. So he was slowly pitting his church against everyone else, which is the opposite of what he had initially intended, right? And the opposite of what he believed originally, or he claimed that he believed. There's an important distinction there. Jones also developed an increasing interest in the practices and teachings of Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Adolf Hitler from a young age. He would later frequently praise Stalin and Vladimir Lenin as heroes. So you can see this very quickly going downhill, very quickly. He starts out like, hey, Black people should be allowed to worship with white people. And they're like, yes. And he's like, hey, the homeless should be fed by the church. And they're like, yes. And he's like, hey, Adolf maybe wasn't that bad of a dude. And you're like, what? After receiving increasing levels of criticism for his desegregated congregations, as well as other activities deemed too socialist for the Pentecostal church, Jones and the People's Temple moved to Redwood Valley, California. So they left Indianapolis, Indiana, and they moved to Redwood Valley, California. And later, San Francisco, where his activism and political involvement would receive high levels of approval from local government. So he left the more conservative Indiana, he came to California, and they were like, hey, we like what this guy's doing. He's anti-racist. He's pro-helping the poor. Yeah, we'll help him out. We'll give him a spot. Jones developed connections with prominent California politicians and was appointed as chairman of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission in 1975. This reminds me so much of those serial killer documentaries where you find out that the serial killer was like president of the freaking PTA or whatever and was such a good dude, or like had a babysitting business run out of their house, and you later find out they're like rapists and murderers. However, this popularity did not last. Beginning in the late 1960s, reports of abuse began to surface as Jones became increasingly vocal in his rejection of traditional Christianity, promoting what he called apostolic socialism and making claims of his own personal divinity. He used the book of Acts from the Christian Bible to promote the idea that everyone within the congregation should share everything and that they should reject the idea of things being a person's own possessions. For example, here's a couple of verses from the book of Acts that he would use in order to convince his congregation that he was correct. So, for example, all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had needs. Acts 2:44 through 45. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of Lord Jesus, and God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there was no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. Acts 4:32 through 35. Jones sadly became progressively more controlling of his followers in People's Temple, which at its peak, by the way, had over 3,000 members. Many turned over all of their income and property to Jones and allowed the church to control all aspects of their life. So this is where it grows very concerning. He goes from, hey, let's all pool our resources and help one another, to you're basically required to give everything that you have to the church and leave yourself with nothing. In the fall of 1973, after critical newspaper articles by reporters combined with the abandonment of 8 temple members, Jones and his closest followers prepared an immediate action plan. The plan they had involved fleeing the country for somewhere in the Caribbean. Jones quickly chose Guyana. Former temple member Tim Carter stated that the reasons for choosing Guyana were the temple's view of a perceived dominance of racism and multinational corporations in the U.S. government. According to Carter, the temple concluded that Guyana, an English-speaking socialist country with predominantly indigenous population, and with a government including prominent Black leaders, would afford Black temple members a peaceful place to live. However, it's a lot more likely that Jones perceived Guyana as a small, poor, and independent enough place for him to easily obtain influence and official protection. He was skillful in presenting the Guyanese government the benefits of allowing the People's Temple to establish a settlement in that country. So while on one hand he's like, oh, this seems like a great place for everyone to live in harmony. People of color are in charge here. Isn't that great? What it actually was he saw an opportunity to gain power for himself and to selfishly take control of a country that wouldn't really be able to do much against him, especially if he brought his people over in sheer numbers. In 1974, Jones and the temple negotiated a lease of 3,800 acres, or about 15.5 kilometers for my non-American listeners, of land in the jungle located 150 miles, or 240 kilometers west of the Guyanese capital of Georgetown, not to be confused with Jonestown. In the summer of 1977, Jones and several hundred temple members moved to the newly named Jonestown. Conveniently, Jones left the same night that an editor at New West magazine read him an article detailing allegations of abuse by former temple members. After the mass migration, Jonestown was vastly overcrowded with a population of as high as 900 members by 1978, which was just the next year. Jonestown was promoted as this communist community, with Jones himself stating, "I believe we're the purest communists there are," which is like, no offense, but I don't think anybody should be allowed to claim themselves as anything. Like, you shouldn't be able to claim yourself as cool or as nice or as the best or as the great. I think other people should be the ones who determine whether or not you're the purest communist there are, but maybe that's just me. More importantly, however, Jones did not permit members to leave Jonestown without his express prior permission. Red flag. After establishing permanent residency, Jonestown life began a swift change from the utopia the members of the congregation were promised by Jones before they got there. Movies from the neighboring Georgetown that the settlers had watched were suddenly canceled and banned in favor of Soviet propaganda and documentaries on American social issues. Temple members were expected to work 6 days a week from approximately 6:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. After work ended, members would attend several hours of activities in the pavilion, including classes in socialism. Jones gradually subjected his followers to definitely mind control and behavior modification techniques borrowed from North Korea and also borrowed from Mao Zedong in China. School lessons and evening lectures were turned to Jones' discussions about revolution and enemies, with an emphasis on the insistence that anyone who left Jonestown was considered an enemy to the rest of the group and a danger to them and their children. Because of the quality of the soil, which actually Guyanese government had tried to warn Jim Jones about before he even bought the property, that it was the lowest quality of soil he could have possibly bought in the country and it wasn't good for agriculture, Jonestown was not self-sufficient and had to import large quantities of commodities such as wheat to Jonestown from outside. Temple members lived in small communal houses, some with walls woven from palm trees, and ate meals that consisted of little more than rice, beans, greens, and occasionally meat, sauce, or eggs. Jones, however, unsurprisingly, reportedly held a small refrigerator in his own abode containing eggs, meat, fruit, salads, and soft drinks. Medical problems such as severe diarrhea and high fevers struck half the community in February of 1978. For a year, it appears that the commune was run primarily through Social Security checks received by members. Up to $65,000 in monthly welfare payments from the United States government agencies to Jonestown residents were signed over to the Temple in 1978. Officials from the U.S. Embassy in Georgetown interviewed Social Security recipients on multiple occasions. They wanted to make sure that they weren't being held against their will, and they interviewed 75 people. All 75 of those people stated that they were not being held captive, they were not being forced to sign over their welfare checks, and that they were not being told they could not leave Jonestown. Which, I mean, how accurate could that really be? They also didn't say that those people were alone without any kind of leadership or chaperone from Jonestown, so we don't even know how accurate that is. Jones addressed the Temple members on a regular basis, talking about Jonestown's safety, and he also convinced them that the CIA was conspiring to destroy the settlement and harm its inhabitants. After work, when purported emergencies, quote, arose, the Temple sometimes conducted what Jones referred to as white nights, nights with an N, not a K. During such events, Jones would give the Jonestown members a few options. They could attempt to flee, they could commit revolutionary suicide, in quotes, or they could stay in Jonestown and fight whatever purported attackers they were being threatened by. Temple defector Deborah Layton described the event in an affidavit. She said, "Everyone, including the children, was told to line up. As we passed through the line, we were given a small glass of red liquid to drink. We were told that the liquid contained poison and that we would die within 45 minutes. We all did as we were told. When the time came when we should have dropped dead, Reverend Jones explained that the poison was not real and that we had just been through a loyalty test. He warned us that the time was not far off when it would become necessary to die by our own hands." The Temple had also received monthly half-pound shipments of cyanide since 1976, after Jones obtained a jeweler's license to buy the chemical purportedly to clean gold. Yeah, because they were mining so much gold, I'm sure. Jones' paranoia and drug usage increased in Jonestown as he became fearful of the government raid on the commune, citing concerns that the community would not be able to resist an attack. Jones was said to be abusing injectables such as Valium, Quaaludes, stimulants, and even barbiturates. During these practices, Jones would call alert, alert, alert over the community loudspeaker to call the community together in the central pavilion. Armed guards with guns and crossbows would surround the pavilion. One drill lasted for 6 days, known as the 6-day siege. This ordeal was used thereafter by Jones as a symbol of the community's indomitable spirit. Side note, I highly encourage people to look up the 6-day siege because it was freaking crazy. Like, it was insane. There was so much information on it, and it was so detailed and insane that I couldn't actually include it in this episode because I'm already at 9 pages, and it was an additional, 10 pages of information. But I had never heard of the 6-day siege before, and it's actually really intense. In my opinion, it's just as intense as the later massacre that would occur. And I highly encourage everybody to look it up if it's not something that'll keep you up at night or make you feel strange and uncomfortable, because I think it's really important that that is an entirely different type of control that he had over these people that I've never heard of. And a lot of us have probably never heard of. I was very familiar with Jonestown and I'd never heard of the 6-day siege. So go look that up. Go take a look. I'll provide some resource links in the description. Turns out there's a lot more to this story and this situation than I even knew, and I think a lot of people probably even know. But I digress. Concerned family members of those who had left the U.S. for Jonestown started to sound the alarm to anyone and everyone that they could. They were concerned about the mental well-being of their loved ones, as well as the living conditions they were being subjected to in Jonestown. They were kind of starting to learn more and more about what was really going on there and what it was like, and it didn't look good. On April 11th, 1978, the concerned relatives distributed a packet of documents, including letters and affidavits that they titled An Accusation of Human Rights Violations by Reverend James Warren Jones to the People's Temple, members of the press, and members of Congress. In June 1978, a further affidavit was provided detailing alleged crimes by the temple and substandard living conditions in Jonestown. So this is where we get to the part involving Congressman Leo Ryan. So Leo Ryan was California's 11th Congressional District Representative, and he was hearing more and more and more about Jonestown and Jim Jones and these relatives who were coming to him concerned, do something. We feel that our relatives are being abused. We feel they're being held hostage. We feel they're being manipulated. Is there anything that you can do? Ryan was friends with the father of a temple member in California whose mutilated body was found near train tracks on October 5th, 1976, 2 years prior, 3 days after a taped telephone conversation with his ex-wife in which leaving the temple was discussed. On November 14th, 1978, Ryan actually flew to Georgetown along with a group of people that included journalists, photographers, concerned family members of people already living in Jonestown. It was a very eclectic group of people, and they arrived in Guyana and were initially refused entrance into Jonestown. They were told, you can't come in. However, on the morning of November 17th, they informed Jones that he would come anyway. He's like, hey, by the way, Jones, I'm going to come in, whether you like it or not. I don't need your permission. I want to check out what's going on here. So they came to the airstrip within 6 miles or 10 kilometers from Jonestown in a small plane. So once they got to Jonestown, only Ryan himself and 2 others were initially accepted inside. The rest were told they couldn't come in. Then they conceded and allowed the rest to follow him in only after sunset. The group attended a musical reception in the settlement's main pavilion. It was later reported and verified by audio tapes recovered by investigators that Jones had conducted rehearsals on how to convince Ryan that everyone was happy in Jonestown. So initially, Jones was like, no, you're not allowed to come. Ryan was like, I'm coming anyway, whether you like it or not. If you don't have anything to hide, what's the problem? So then fine, Jones was like, okay, 2 of you. Then he was like, fine, the rest of you. And in between that time that he found out that Ryan was coming anyway, he'd rehearsed how he was going to make it sound like a great place to live, which is utterly horrifying. 2 temple members, Vernon Gosney and Monica Bagby, made the first move to leave Jonestown that night. In the pavilion, Gosney passed a note reading, Dear Congressman, Vernon Gosney and Monica Bagby, please help us get out of Jonestown. A child nearby, though, witnessed him passing this note over to the group of visitors and verbally alerted temple members. That's how brainwashed these people were, that even children were like, hey, that guy's a traitor. Alert, alert, alert. Somebody do something. It was then when the child alerted the rest of the congregation and they acted and reacted the way that they did, that the congressman realized something was really wrong. Originally, he was falling for the rehearsed act that everything was fine, but the moment a child alerts, he's like, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? In the early morning of November 18th, the next morning, 11 temple members sensed danger enough to walk out of Jonestown. They were like, we don't like what's going around here. There's some kind of vibe. Something bad's going to happen. We want to get out of here. That afternoon, multiple families also came forward and asked to be escorted out of Jonestown by Ryan. Though Jones supposedly gave these families his permission to leave, thanks, Jones, because we need it, he also stated that those who were leaving were lying and only wanted to aid in destroying Jonestown. So even upon giving them his permission, which they didn't ask for, to leave Jonestown, he was like, fine, you can go, but also you're a traitor, and I know that you just want to ruin our lives here, so good luck. The brainwashing goes deep. Before leaving Jonestown for the airstrip, Ryan was reported as saying that regardless of the people he would be leaving with who were abandoning Jonestown, he'd leave a good report of the place when he returned to the United States and wouldn't report any negative findings. I think he was literally just saying this because he could feel that there was a super duper hostile energy following them. I think he sensed that he needed to get out of there and get out of there fast. So instead of taking the people and fleeing, instead he was like, this place is beautiful. This place is great. I'll take these people with me because they're clearly haters, but this is a great place, and I won't tell anyone anything less when I get back to the US. Y'all have a beautiful thing going here. Unfortunately, this is where things took a turn for the absolute worst. Ryan and his companions, among him the defecting temple members, and the concerned family members and the photographers and journalists, they would be met by gunfire and killed at the airstrip before they could board the plane back to the U.S. Jim Jones had sent members of the temple to assassinate them so that they couldn't leave and return to the United States. And things only get worse from here. This leads us to the main event that everybody knows about, or if you don't know about, this is the worst of it. So back in Jonestown, aides filled a large metal tub with grape Flavor Aid, poisoned with a concoction of drugs that I won't list here because I don't want anybody to know how to make it, prepared with the help of Jonestown in-house doctor, Dr. Larry Schacht, who had his college education to become a doctor paid for by Jim Jones. So this doctor, who was only a doctor because Jim Jones paid for his medical school, assisted in creating this tub of grape-flavored poison that he would later use to kill all of the members of Jonestown. Jim Jones made a call over the intercom that they had in the village, I suppose, or the compound, calling all members immediately to the pavilion. Now, this is where the tape comes in, and this is what I'll say before inputting the tape. This tape is an actual recording of Jim Jones speaking to his congregation in the pavilion, and he is basically telling them what happened, but his obviously totally fucked up and manipulative version of what happened, and that the CIA and bad people are basically coming to kill them all and kill their children. There's a great emphasis on children in this recording, and that's why I wanted to make sure that everybody had the proper warning that they needed before listening to it. He basically convinces them that nothing can be done to help them and that they're all doomed, and that the best thing they can possibly do as family and as parents and as members of the congregation is to kill their children and to kill themselves. And in this recording, I'm just going to let you know, warning, you literally hear them first protest. And this is why I refuse to call this case a mass suicide. I refuse because it is heard in the recording. This was not consensual. This was not a willingness. This is a group of people being told that they are about to suffer a horrible consequence if they don't take their own life first, and that the best thing they can do, they're being manipulated into thinking the best thing they can do for their children is kill their children. In this recording, people are crying, they're sobbing, they're arguing, people try to stand up. There's a woman who even tries to stand up and argue with Jim Jones and talk about why they shouldn't kill themselves and why the children deserve to live. It's very tragic. It's not consensual. In my opinion, it's not suicide. It's murder and it's coercion. And it's important that we remember and we keep these things present in history, just as it's important to remember things like the Holocaust and other horrible things that happened, because history does have a habit of repeating itself, and we all need to be aware of how easily we too can be subjected to manipulation tactics that, again, start out so positive. You know, we want racial equality. We want to feed the homeless. We want to clothe the homeless. We want to help people who don't have jobs find jobs. We want to take money from the church and use it to support people in love through Christ, whatever. And very slowly and very gradually become manipulative and horrible and abusive and disgusting. If this isn't something you want to hear, I recommend just skipping the rest of this episode entirely. And for those of you who are about to listen, I apologize in advance that this ever happened.
how very much I've loved you, how very much I've tried my best to give you the good life. But in spite of all of that I've tried, a handful of our people, with their lies, have made our life impossible. There's no way to detach ourselves from what's happened today. Not only we're in a compound situation, not only are there those who have left and committed the betrayal of the century. Some have stolen children from others, and they're in pursuit right now to kill them because they stole their children. And we are sitting here waiting on a powder keg. I don't think this is what we want to do with our babies. I don't think that's what we had in mind to do with our babies. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down. So to sit here and wait for the catastrophe that's going to happen on that airplane, it's going to be a catastrophe. Almost happened here. Almost happened. The congressman was nearly killed here. But you can't steal people's children. You can't take off with people's children without expecting a violent reaction. And that's not so unfamiliar to us either. Even if we were Judeo-Christian, if we weren't communists, the world, the kingdom suffereth violence, and the violence shall take it by force. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace. We've been so betrayed. We have been so terribly betrayed. But we tried, and as Jack Beam often said, I don't know where he's at right this moment. Where's Jack? He said, if this only worked one day, it was worthwhile. What's going to happen here in a matter of a few minutes is that one of those people on that plane is going to shoot the pilot. I know that. I didn't plan it, but I know it's going to happen. They're going to shoot that pilot, and down comes that plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over, because they'll parachute in here on us. I'm telling you just as plain as I know how to tell you, I've never lied to you. I never have lied to you. I know that's what's going to happen. That's what he intends to do. And he will do it. He'll do it. Fortunately, being so bewildered with many pressures on my brain, seeing all these people behave so treasonous, it was just too much for me to put together. But I now know what he was telling me, and it'll happen. If the plane gets in the air, even. So my opinion is that we be kind to children and be kind to seniors and take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back. They won't leave us alone. They're now going back to tell more lies, which means more congressmen, and there's no way we can survive. Anybody wish to? Anyone that has any dissenting opinion, please speak. Yes. You can have an opportunity, but if our children are left, we are going to have them butchered. We can make a strike, but we'll be striking against people that we don't want to strike against. We'd like to get the people who cause this stuff, and if some people here are prepared to know how to do that, to go in town and get Timothy Stone, but there's no plane. There's no plane. You can't catch a plane in time. He's responsible for it. He brought these people to us. He and Deanna Myrtle. But people in San Francisco will not be idle over this. They'll not take our death in vain, you know. Yes, Christine? Is it too late for Russia? Here's why it's too late for Russia. They killed. They started to kill. That's why it makes it too late for Russia. Otherwise, I'd said, Russia, you bet your life. But it's too late. I can't control these people. They're out there. They've gone with their guns, and it's too late. And once we kill anybody, at least that's the way I've always put my lot with you. If one of my people do something, it's me. Now they say I don't have to take the blame for this, but I don't live that way. They said deliver up Ujara, who tried to get the man back here. Ujara, whose mother has been lying on him and trying to break up this family, and they've all agreed to kill us by any means necessary. You think I'm going to deliver them, Ujara? Not on your life. No. No, you're not going. You're not going. You're not going. I can't live that way. I cannot live that way. I've lived for all, and I'll die for all. I've been living on hope for a long time, Christine, and I appreciate it. You've always been a very good agitator. I like agitation because you got to see two sides of one issue, two sides of a question. But what those people are going to get done, what they get through, will make our life worse than hell. Will make the Russians not accept us when they get through lying. They told so many lies between there and that truck that we are done in as far as any other alternative.
Well, I said let's make an airlift to Russia. That's what I say. I don't think nothing is impossible.
Well, how are we going to
believe it?
How are you going to airlift to Russia?
Well, I thought they said if we got in an emergency, they gave you a code to let them know.
No, they did. They gave us the code that they'd let us know of an issue, not us create an issue for them. They said if they saw the country coming down, they'd give us the code. They give us a code. You can check on there and see if it's on the code. You can check with Russia to see if they'll take us in immediately. Otherwise, we die. I don't know what else you say to these people. But to me, death is not a fearful thing. It's living that's treacherous. I have never seen anything like this before in my life. I've never seen people take the law and do in their own hands and provoke us and try to purposely agitate murder of children. There's no, Christine, it's not worth living like this. Not worth living like this.
I think that there were too few who left for 1,200 people to give them their lives for those people that left.
You know how many left?
20 odd. That's a small
20 odd.
Compared to what's here.
20 odd. But what's going to happen when they don't leave? I hope that they could leave, but what's going to happen when they don't leave?
You mean the people here?
Yeah, what's going to happen to us when they don't leave, when they get on the plane and the plane goes down?
I don't think it'll go down.
You don't think it'll go down? I wish I could tell you were right, but I'm right. There's one man there who blames, and rightfully so, Debbie Blakey for the murder of his mother, and he'll stop that pilot by any means necessary. He'll do it. That plane will come out of the air. There's no way you fly a plane without a pilot.
I wasn't speaking about that plane. I was speaking about the plane for us to go to Russia.
To Russia. You think Russia's going to want... No, not going to... We're not, you think Russia's going to want us with all this stigma? We had some value, but now we don't have any value.
Well, I don't see it like that. I mean, I feel like that as long as there's life, there's hope. That's my faith.
Well, everybody dies. Someplace that hope runs out because everybody dies. I haven't seen anybody yet that didn't die. And I like to choose my own kind of death for a change. I'm tired of being tormented to hell. That's what I'm tired of. Tired of it. 1,200 people's lives in my hands, and I certainly don't want your life in my hand. But I'm going to tell you, Christine, without me, life has no meaning. I'm the best friend you'll ever have. Once I have to pay, I'm standing with you, Jara. I'm standing with those people. They're part of me. I can detach myself. My attorney says detach myself. No. I never detached myself from any of your troubles. I've always taken your troubles right on my shoulders. And I'm not going to change that now. It's too late. I've been running too long. I'm not going to change now. Maybe the next time you get to go to Russia, the next time around. What I'm talking about now is in the dispensation of judgment. This is a revolutionary suicide council. I'm not talking about self-destruction. I'm talking about what we have no other road. I will take your call. We will put it to the Russians, and I can tell you the answer now because I'm a prophet. Call the Russians and tell them, see if they'll take us.
I said I'm afraid to die.
I don't think you are.
Means.
I don't think you are.
But I look at our babies and I think they deserve to live.
I agree.
You know?
But also they deserve, what's more, they deserve peace.
We all came here for peace.
And have we had it?
No.
I tried to give it to you. I've laid down my life practically. I've practically died every day to give you peace. And you've still not had any peace. You look better than I've seen you in a long while, but it's still not the kind of peace that I wanted to give you. So, a person's a fool that continues to say that you're winning when you're losing. Win one, lose two. What? I didn't hear you, ma'am. You have to speak up. That's a sweet thought. Who said that? Come on up and speak it again, honey. Come up and say it talk about it. It's taken off. No, plane is taken off. It's suicide. They have done it. Stone has done it. But somebody ought to. Somebody. Can they talk? Can they not talk to San Francisco? See, the Stone does not get by with this infamy. This is infamy. He has done the thing he wanted to do. To have us destroyed.
When we destroy ourselves, we're defeated. We let the enemy defeat us.
Did you see I live to fight no more forever?
Yes, I saw that.
Did you not have some sense of pride and victory in that man? He would not subject himself to the will and whim of people who tell that they're going to come in whenever they please and push into our house, come when they please, take who they want to, talk to who they want to. Is that living? That's not living to me. That's not freedom. That's not the kind of freedom I sought.
But I think where they made their mistake is when they stopped to rest. If they had gone on, they would have made it. But they stopped to rest.
It's over, sister. It's over. We've made that day, we made a beautiful day. And let's make it a beautiful day. That's what
We win when we go down. Tim Stone has nobody else to hate. He has nobody else to hate. Then he'll destroy himself. I'm speaking here not as the administrator. I'm speaking as a prophet today. I wouldn't step in this seat and talk so serious if I didn't know what I was talking about. If there's any way to call back the immense amount of damage that's going to be done. But I cannot separate myself from the pain of my people. You can't either, Christine, if you stop to think about it. You can't separate yourself. We've walked too long together.
I know that, but I still think as an individual, I have a right to...
You do, and I'm listening.
What I think, what I feel, and I think we all have a right to our own destiny as individuals.
Right.
And I think I have a right to choose mine, and everybody else has a right to choose theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. I'm not criticizing. I'm not trying to... What's that? Said today. That's what 20 people said today with their lives.
I think I still have a right to my own opinion.
I'm not taking it from you. I'm not taking it from you.
Christine, you're only standing here because he was here in the first place. So I don't know what you're talking about, having an individual life. Your life has been extended to the day that you're standing there because of him.
Voice back there, she has much right to speak to anybody else, too. What'd you say, Luby? Well, you'll regret that this very day if you don't die. You'll regret it if you don't die. You'll regret it.
Too many people.
I saved them, but I made my example. I made my expression. I made my manifestation, and the world was not ready for me. Paul said, I was a man born out of due season. I've been born out of due season just like all we are, and the best testimony we can make is to leave this goddamn world. Jeez.
I'm not talking to her. Will you let me talk?
You're talking.
Would you make her sit down and let me talk while I'm on the floor, or let her talk?
Property tell the leader what to do. It really isn't. I've listened to you. You asked me about Russia. I'm right now making a call to Russia. What more do you suggest? I'm listening to you. If Russia gives me one slight bit of encouragement, I just now instructed them to go there and do that.
And you would be no fucking good in Russia, goddammit!
All right, now everybody hold it. We didn't come. Hold it.
Much longer to maintain. To lay down your burdens. I'm going to lay down my burdens down by the riverside. So we lay them down here in the side of Guyana. What's the difference? No man didn't take our life right now. He hadn't taken it. But when they start parachuting out of the air, they'll shoot some of our innocent babies. I don't want to see this, Christine, because they got to shoot me to get through to some of these people. I'm not letting them take your jar. Can you let them take your jar?
See John die?
What's that?
You mean you want to see John, the little one who keeps?
I want to see.
Christine, are you saying that you think he thinks more of them than other children here?
John.
That's what you're saying.
But you're acting. Do you think I'd put John's life above others? If I put John's life above others, I wouldn't be standing with his jar. I'd send John out. He could go out on the driveway tonight.
Because he's young. They're young.
I know, but he's no different to me than any of these children here. He's just one of my children. I don't prefer one above another. I don't prefer him above your jar. I can't do that. I can't separate myself from your actions or his actions. If you'd done something wrong, I'd stand with you. If they wanted to come and get you, they'd have to take me.
We're all ready to go. If you tell us we have to give our lives now, we're ready. I'm pretty sure all the rest of the sisters and brothers are with me.
For months I've tried to keep this thing from happening, but I now see it's the will of sovereign being that this happened to us. That we lay down our lives in protest against what's being done. That we lay down our lives to protest in what's being done. The criminality of people, the cruelty of people. Who walked out of here today? Did you notice who walked out? Mostly white people. Mostly white people walked. I'm so grateful for the ones that didn't, those who knew who they are. But there's no point. There's no point to this. We are born before our time. They won't accept us. And I don't think we should sit here and take any more time for our children to be endangered, because they come after our children and we give them our children, then our children will suffer forever. I have no quarrel with you coming up. I like you. I personally like you very much.
People get hostile when you try to...
Oh, well, some people do. But just some people do. Put it that way. I'm not hostile. You had to be honest, and you stayed, and if you'd wanted to run, you'd have run with them, because anybody could have run today. They would have wanted to. I know you're not a runner. And your life's precious to me. It's as precious as John's. And I don't, what I do with weight and justice and judgment. I've weighted against all evidence.
That's all I
What
got to
comes
say.
now, folks? What comes now?
Everybody hold it.
Stay peace. Stay peace. Stay peace. Stay peace. Stay peace. What's coming? Don't let that. Just take Dwyer on down to the east house. Take Dwyer.
Everybody be quiet, please.
So you've got some respect for our lives.
That means sit down, sit down, sit down.
I know. I tried so very, very hard. We're trying over here to see what can happen in Los Angeles. Who is it? Get Dwyer out of here before something happens to him. Dwyer? I'm not talking about you, Jara. I said Dwyer. Ain't nobody gonna take you, Jara. I'm not letting them take you, Jara. Gather in, folks. It's easy. It's easy. Yes, my love.
At one time, I felt just like Christine felt. But after today, I don't feel anything because the biggest majority of the people that left here were white. And I know it really hurt my heart because
Broke your heart, didn't it?
It broke my heart to think that all of these years that these white people have been with us and they're not a part of us. So we might as well end it now because I don't see...
Talking. The congressman has been murdered. It's all over, all over. What a legacy, what a legacy. But the Red Brigade's the only ones that ever made any sense anyway. They invaded our privacy, they came into our home, they followed us 6,000 miles away. The Red Brigade showed them justice. The congressman's dead. Please get us some medication. It's simple. There's no convulsions with it. It's just simple. Just please get it. Before it's too late, the GDF will be here. I tell you, get moving, get moving, get moving. Yeah. Don't be afraid to die. If these people land out here, they'll torture some of our children here. They'll torture our people. They'll torture our seniors. We cannot have this. Are you going to separate yourself from whoever shot the congressman? I don't know who shot him. Speaker Pete and those had a right to go, and they had a right to... How many are dead? Oh, God Almighty, God Almighty. Patty Parks is dead?
And the others to endure long enough in a safe place to write about the goodness of Jim Jones?
I don't know how in the world they're ever going to write about us. It's just too late. It's too late. The congressman's dead. The congressman today's dead. Many of our traitors are dead. They're all laying out there dead. I didn't, but my people did. My people did. They're my people. And they've been provoked too much. They've been provoked too much. What's happened here has been this has been an act of provocation. Yes.
If there's any way it's possible to have them to give Ted something to take him, I'm satisfied, okay?
What's that?
I said, if there's any way you can do to have them to give Ted something so he won't have to let him go too, okay? And I'm satisfied.
That's fine. Ted, yes. Yes.
Because I said I never wanted to live with you guys. And I appreciate you for everything. You're the only, and I appreciate you.
Okay. Please, can we hasten? Can we hasten with that medication? You don't know what you've done. I tried. Move, please move.
Wesley told me there were 2 GDF.
They saw it happen and ran in the bush and dropped their machine guns. I never in my life. But there'll be more. You got to move. Are you going to get the medication here? You got to move. Marston, there's about 40 minutes.
You have to move, and the people that are standing there in the aisle go stay in the radio room yard, but everybody get behind the table and back this way, okay? There's nothing to worry about. Everybody keep calm and try and keep your children calm. And the older children can help love the little children and reassure them. Children aren't crying from pain. It's just a little bitter tasting, but they're not crying out of any pain. Annie McGowan, can I please see you back?
I used to do before I came here. So let me tell you about it. It might make a lot of you feel a little more comfortable. Sit down and be quiet, please. One of the things that I used to do, I used to be a therapist. And the kind of therapy that I did had to do with reincarnation and past life situations. And every time anybody had the experience of going into a past life, I was fortunate enough through Father to be able to let them experience it all the way through their death, so to speak. And everybody was so happy when they made that step to the other side.
When you step, there's no other thing you can do but step that way. It's the only way to step. That choice is not ours now. It's out of our hands.
If you have a body that's been crippled, suddenly you have the kind of body that you want to have.
A little rest.
It feels good. You've never felt so good, family, I tell you. You've never felt so good is how that feels.
And I do hope that those attorneys will stay where they belong and don't come up here. What is it? What is it? Get what? It's hard. Only at first. Only at first is it hard. It's hard only at first. Living, you're looking at death. It only living is much, much more difficult. Raising up every morning and not knowing what's going to be the night's bringing. It's much more difficult. It's much more difficult.
I just want to say something to everyone that I see that is standing around and crying. This is nothing to cry about. This is something we should all rejoice about. We should be happy about this. They always told us that we should cry when you're coming into this world. Well, when we're living and we're living it peaceful, I think we should be happy about this. I was just thinking about Jim Jones. He just has suffered and suffered and suffered. He is the only God, and he don't even have a chance to enjoy himself here. And I wanted to say one more thing. This is one thing I want to say. That few that's gone, it's many more here. That's not all of us. That's not all yet. That's just a few that has got a chance to get to the one that they could tell their story to, their lives to. So I'm looking at so many people crying. I wish you would not cry and just thank Father. Just thank him. I've been here about... I've been here 1 year and 9 months, and I never felt better in my life, not in San Francisco, but until I came to Jonestown. I've enjoyed this life. I've had a beautiful life. And I don't see nothing for us to be crying about. We should be happy. At least I am. Let's sing some little things.
Wouldn't be alive today. I just like to thank Dad because he was the only one that stood up for me when I needed him. And thank you, Dad.
I'm glad you're my brothers and sisters, and I'm glad to be here. Okay.
Please, for God's sakes, let's get on with it. We've lived as no other people have lived and loved. We've had as much of this world as you're going to get. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it. It's far, far harder to have to watch you every day die slowly. And from the time you're a child to the time you get gray, you're dying. It's honest, and I'm sure that they'll pay for it. They'll pay for it. This is a revolutionary suicide. This is not a self-destructive suicide. So they'll pay for this. They brought this upon us, and they'll pay for that. I leave that destiny to them. Who wants to go with their child has a right to go with their child. I think it's humane. I want to go. I want to see you go, though. They can take me and do with me whatever they want to do. I want to see you go. I don't want to see you go through this hell no more. No more, no more, no more. We're trying. If everybody will relax. The best thing you do to relax, then you'll have no problem. You'll have no problem with the thing if you just relax.
Of the children here, a great deal because of Jim Jones. And the way the children are laying there now, I'd rather see them lay like that than to see them have to die like the Jews did, which was pitiful anyhow. And I'd just like to thank Dad for giving us life and also death. And I appreciate the fact the way our children are going. Because like Dad said, when they come in, what they're going to do to our children, they're going to massacre our children. And also the ones that they take captured, they're going to just let them grow up and be dummies like they want them to be. And not grow up to be a socialist like the one and only Jim Jones. So I'd like to thank Dad for our opportunity for letting Jonestown be not what it could be, but what Jonestown is. Thank you, Dad.
It's not to be feared. It is not to be feared. It's a friend. It's a friend. You're sitting there. Show your love for one another. Let's get calm. Let's get calm. To us, we had nothing we could do. We can't separate ourselves from our own people. For 20 years laying in some old rotten nursing home. Taking us through all these anguish years. They took us and put us in chains, and that's nothing. There's no comparison to that, to this. They robbed us of our land, and they've taken us and driven us, and we tried to find ourselves. We tried to find a new beginning, but it's too late. You can't separate yourself from your brother and your sister. No way I'm going to do it. I refuse. I don't know who fired the shot. I don't know who killed the congressman. But as far as I'm concerned, I killed him. You understand what I'm saying? I killed him. He had no business coming. I told him not to come.
with respect. Die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. There's nothing to death. It's like Max said, it's just stepping over into another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialist, communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. Soon we'll have no choice. Now we have some choice. You think they're going to allow this to be done and allow us to get by with this?
Must be insane.
Children, it's just something to put you to rest. Oh, God. Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this. Free at last. Please, keep your emotions down, keep your emotions down. Children, it will not hurt if you'll be quiet. If you'll be quiet. It's never been done before, you say. It's been done by every tribe in history. Every tribe facing annihilation. All the Indians of the Amazon are doing it right now. They refuse to bring any babies into the world. They kill every child that comes into the world because they don't want to live in this kind of a world. So be patient, be patient. Death is, I tell you, I don't care how many screams you hear, I don't care how many anguished cries. Death is 1,000,000 times preferable to 10 more days of this life. If you knew what was ahead of you, you'd be glad to be stepping over tonight. Death is common to people. And the Eskimos, they take death in their stride. Let's be dignified. If you'll quit telling them they're dying, if you adults would stop some of this nonsense, adults, I call on you to stop this nonsense. I call on you to quit exciting your children when all they're doing is going to quiet rest. I call on you to stop this now. If you have any respect at all, are we black, proud, and socialist, or what are we? Now stop this nonsense. Don't carry this on anymore. You're exciting your children. All over, and it's good. No sorrow that it's all over. I'm glad it's over. Hurry, my children, hurry. All I say does not fall into the hands of the enemy. Hurry, my children. Hurry. There's seniors out here that I'm concerned about. Hurry. I don't want to leave my seniors to this mess. Quickly. Sisters, good knowing you. No more pain, Al. No more pain, I said, Al. No more pain. Jim Cobb is laying on the airfield dead at this moment. Remember, the Oliver woman said she'd come over and kill me if her sons wouldn't stop her. These are people, the peddlers of hate. All we're doing is laying down our life. We're not letting them take our life. We're laying down our life. We're seeking their lives. We just want peace.
All I'd like to say is that my so-called parents was filled with so much hate. And treachery. I think you people out here should think about how your relatives was and be glad about that the children are being laid to rest. And all I like to say is I thank Dad for making me strong to stand with it all and make me ready for it. Thank you.
All they're doing is taking a drink to go to sleep. That's what death is, sleep.
of it. I'm tired of it all.
Loving thing he could have ever done, the most loving thing all of us could have done. And it's been a pleasure walking with all of you in this revolutionary struggle. No other way I would rather go than give my life for socialism, communism. And I thank Dad very, very much.
That Dad's love and mercy and goodness and kindness and bringing us to this land of freedom. His love, his mother was the advance guard to socialism. And his love and his mercy should go on forever, on for the fields.
Where's the vat? Where's the vat with the green C?
Love should go on forever to the fields of time. And thank you, Dad.
The vat with the green C in, please. Bring it here so the adults can begin. Beg you, don't fail to follow my advice. You'll be sorry. You'll be sorry. That we do it and that they do it. Must trust you. You have to step across. We used to sing this world's not our home. Well, it sure isn't. As we were saying, it sure wasn't. He doesn't want to tell him. All he's doing, if they will tell him, assure these children. Some people assure these children of the relaxation of stepping over to the next plane. We've set an example for others. We've set 1,000 people who say we don't like the way the world is. Please stop. Take our life from us. We laid it down. We got tired. We didn't commit suicide. We committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the conditions of an inhumane world.
If you or someone you know is suffering from depression or suicidal thoughts or ideation, please know that you and they are not alone. Dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Please do not feel like you shouldn't get help. Everyone deserves help.